Well, yeah, that's my second drink there. Ooh, ooh. Right, let's see. As far as strange happenings going, just lately, in the past week or so, I've been watching some Jeffrey Mishlove videos on YouTube. Somebody commented a while back that he's alive, he's putting out good content on YouTube. Check him out. So I have been checking him out. Then I saw one of his talking about the PK Man, the book I read by Jeffrey Mishlove. It's over there. The PK Man about psychokinesis. And that was recommended by a friend of mine from Aruba. I mentioned that in an earlier video. So yeah, I read it. And yeah, there were similarities to that. So I was watching some of it. And then watching him talking to these other psychologists and other people like that. Talking about people. This recent one I just watched. The title something to do with macro psychokinesis. And it's like, wait a minute. That's even more related to me. That's really just solidifying some things, just solidifying stuff. Now, we talked about with Jeffrey Mishlove, and I mentioned this too with me, electricity and lightning and weather modifications and all this weird kind of stuff like that. And eventually it's been going on in my life that I just had to give in and say it's real from my crazy little world. And it is real. And all this stuff does happen. What they're talking about on this one, I wrote a couple of little notes down, is that one of the things is poltergeist type activity. I mentioned in some early videos about the haunted house that we grew up in. It wasn't haunted or poltergeist activity before we moved in. When we moved in, it started happening. And he said, people with this macro psychokinesis things, this happens, this poltergeist activity happens. And usually it's attributed to things outside, other entities and things like this. But a lot of times it's coming from the person. One of the other things that, and I mentioned that, the poltergeist activity in our haunted house when I was young, very young. Also, I believe, I don't know if I talked about it or if I put it in just in the description, that when mom would send us to the babysitters very young, that this activity would happen there as well. The thing is, even when we left the babysitters, it would continue to happen, even though we weren't there. And he said that's another aspect of this psychokinesis stuff, is when it's focused in one area, it has a lingering effect. The person can still leave, but the activity continues, at least for a while. It will continue, even though that the person is gone. This poltergeist psychokinesis type activity continues. So it has this lingering effect. And I'm like, okay, I've talked about this. Okay, it's solidifying some of this even more now. Something he else just said in this video I just watched, I'll try to put a link down below to the YouTube video I'm talking about. But he also, Jeffrey Mishlove, was talking about a rapping effect. And it can be recorded, an audible, recordable effect of this knocking sound. He called it rapping. I called it knocking. That throughout my life, I've heard this knocking sound, and I think it's someone at the door. And it can wake me up from a sleep. I can be wide awake, and I hear it. And I go check around the house, and there's nobody there. This has happened throughout, I'm 60, almost 60 years old now. End of October, I'll be 60. This has happened throughout my life, this rapping sound. I call it knocking. And he talked about that. Okay. And then another thing, the third final point that kind of got my attention. A lot of this got my attention because it's just so relatable. I'm just like, I get it. And he talks about, in some cases, it can be almost self-destructive. It harms the person. These people have some type of self-destructive tendency, whether they've been told they're bad or evil or the devil or whatever is inside them, whatever. And then it comes in and causes a self-destructive, a harmful, self-harmful effect. I understand that. I really understand that. And I understand how it's created. And it's with fear. Because I've done it before. uh, my wife, just before I started doing this video, she goes, "Do you need to write notes down?" And I'm like, "No, this is my life. I understand this. This is the way it works." And for the fear aspect of it, to control it, the self-destructive part and that type of poltergeist stuff, it's almost like you know what it's like to be afraid, to feel fear. So you amplify it, and you just amplify that fear, that you feel it. You feel it. You know it. You feel it and condense it around yourself and pull it in. And it's this intense fear feeling. And then shit happens. Ooh, shouldn't have said a bad word, right? It starts happening like that. But it's fear-based and self-destructive. And he talked about that. And I'm like, yeah. He also briefly mentioned, which I didn't write a note on, about electronics. He specifically mentioned a computer and stuff starts not working right. I just started laughing. I didn't write a note down. I started laughing. I told my wife this. At the San Diego conference, uh, Linda Moulton Howe came on as a speaker. I think it was a 3-day conference. It was the last day of the conference anyway. And that somebody I really wanted to hear from was Linda Moulton Howe. I wanted to hear what she had to say. So I was really focused on her. And weird stuff started happening on her computer. She even said, it's out there. Porter Twist recorded it. I know they've put it out there. And she's like, oh, there's something here. There's something interfering with my computer. Stuff is going on that she can't explain. It's happening. Yeah, I get that. I really get that. So watching some of these Jeffrey Mishlove videos, some of them are just from years ago. This particular one is 7 years ago. I just heard about this guy from reading this book, PK Man. I just heard about him. Then somebody put a comment in chat that he has these YouTube videos. So this is new to me. This isn't old stuff. I mean, it is old stuff. He's had it out there a while, but it's new to me. Um, so it's solidifying in what they call macro PK. And apparently what he's also talked in other videos, that a lot of the scientific community won't pay attention unless you're officially trained and can go through the protocols and use some type of scientific method to document. But a lot of the natural ones is kind of wild. Okay, kind of wild. I get it. Maybe I need to be trained. I need to train myself. But I'm 60 years old already. I'll look at a little bit of training and see what they're talking about. See how to focus it a little better. But I've done that all my life, is try to train myself on how to focus it. And I've learned some things like that fear aspect and pulled it around and self-destructive. And it's just experiences. I've learned all this just through experiencing things and trying things out and figuring it out for myself without any type of formal training. No formal training from anyone. I find it to be interesting, and I'm liking his videos. I still like Jeffrey Mishlove. Apparently he took some of Ted Owen's courses, and maybe that's why when I look at him, it's almost like looking into space. I mentioned this in the earlier video about Jeffrey Mishlove, looking into his mind, and it's open. I said completely open. What it's like is space. It's like going into this open space. I can't explain it any better, but a lot of people have these thoughts and desires and dreams and all these layers of stuff. But with him on this, maybe because he had this certain type of training, it's really open to space, and I'm seeing other things in there. So I find that interesting. Boy, I'm rambling now. I'm really rambling. Oh, probably because of this. But it's really solidified the macro PK part of it when he's talking about these poltergeist activities, haunted houses are related a lot of times with a person, and the effects can linger. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have talked about that here from the very beginning I mean, single digit strange happening numbers. Talking about the haunted house. And I have my mother on here talking about some of it. Same thing. Whew. Something I don't think I've ever included in a video here. I am doing an interview with Karen Swain from Australia once again toward the end of September, September 19th or something or another. I'll try to figure it out and figure out the date. I sent her a few pages. I typed up some pages of some things she probably didn't know about me and put it in there, including some of the dark stuff. Even on that video I just watched about macro PK, talking about some of the negative, dark stuff that can happen. That, you know, you focus on something and want stuff to happen, and he included even people having heart attacks. I'm like, I mentioned that in a video that I wasn't happy about talking about it. I don't like talking about it. But even when my first cousin, one of my first cousins, was wanting me dead, wanting to kill me, talking to other people who would do stuff like that, and then he walked out of his house that same week and dropped dead of a heart attack. And you don't want to take responsibility for it, but it happens, and you have to admit and take responsibility for it. Part of it, he keeps talking about the subconscious level. I tried to keep everything out in the open. It's from the heart area, just open and honest about it. And this is part of that honest part, even the dark part. Trying to keep thoughts under control because things can happen. Bad things can happen. Yeah, it really can. So you do have to keep your thoughts under control, at least for somebody like me. You do have to keep them under control and realize what's going on. Maybe I'll look into some type of formal training that's happened in the past. Oh, formal training. Thinking about that too. Boy, you can tell I've had a drink, which I don't normally do. Second one. Don't normally do that. I put that in one of the comments to Karen Swain is alcohol numbs a lot of this for me. It numbs it down. And it's funny that they talked about... I was just thinking about The Shining by Stephen King and then Dr. Sleep afterwards. With Dr. Sleep, there were a couple other things in there. He mentioned about the alcoholism and he was drinking a lot. And for me, drinking numbs it. And it makes you feel a little more normal. And that's what I use the alcohol for sometimes, is just to feel a little more normal. But I really don't drink. I don't. It's just happening. It's just an accidental happening. Something else in Dr. Sleep, the reason he got the name was being around the dying and trying to help them as they die, which I was there with my father when he died. I was there with my father-in-law when he died. And I was there easing my grandfather's mind too. The last family member to ever see him alive was me. Again, doing the same thing. So I get that. I'm off track. I am rambling now. I'm getting so far off topic. I'm glad I'm watching these videos by Jeffrey Mishlove. It is solidifying some things and making me realize I am not crazy. I realized that a while back, within putting these videos out, in the past 3 years, putting these videos out, I am not crazy. I thought like 2 years ago. But it's even solidifying other parts of this, how you can influence reality. And it does happen. It really does happen. And the negative stuff comes from yourself because you're feeling that. You're feeling this fear, this not self-doubt. It's worse than self-doubt. This is self-harm, self-destruction. And that's when the negative stuff really takes effect. And it's all based off fear. It really is. And that's when it happens. The self-destructive negative parts happen. I think I'm past that mostly. for personal self, ego self, whatever you want to call it, past that. So a lot of the negative stuff doesn't happen. It was funny too. They were talking on the video about the other guy he was interviewing. I'll put a link below. About really wanting to interview or learn about people who are either lucky or unlucky. He really wants to focus on the people who have this worse luck. Really focus on them. That would be my neighbors behind me. They have the worst luck. Always have been. Even my father-in-law, from when he was younger with them, they have the worst luck ever. That's my neighbors. And I'm the opposite. I have extremely good luck. Extreme luckiness. I've mentioned that before about coincidence and being lucky, using those two words, lucky and coincidence. I am an extremely lucky person. So I'm on the opposite end of unfortunate unlucky. I am lucky. Anyway, let's stop this video. I'm rambling too much. Thanks for paying attention. If you reached it this far of my ramblings, God, 16 minutes into rambling. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks just for listening. Because I really don't have anybody else to talk to. I've talked to Karin Swain and Sheila Seppi, some of the other people, and I appreciate them listening. But I don't always say everything. I've mentioned that I think once before in my very first time I talked to Sheila Seppi's group, my very first presentation, and I quickly mentioned talking to someone that had questions at the end. I don't always say everything. And one of my videos I do say I try to put everything out there, but it is so much feeling and things I see in my mind. It's hard to explain. Reality is getting flatter, if that's... Anyway, I'm stopping now. Stop. Thanks for listening, and hope you have a great day.